most of these break points, I hate to admit it, were built off of most of my failures. Trying to figure out how to do it right the next iteration. And then going out and saying, hey, if I had those failures, how many other people had those failures?
I have built an outdoor advertising company from scratch, and it took 10 years, but in 10 years we developed it out and then sold it to JP Morgan.
Good for you, by the way.
My question is, have you ever taken this platform and then started with a new venture?
Yes, so it takes courage for
Yes.
people, but I have a young architect who came to me and said, I want to start a new business. I'm going to go through this whole funnel while I'm working somewhere else. So put a 15-month plan together. And he went through all my programs. Then we engineered his platform. And then he launched May of 2021. And by December, he did 1.5 million. Does anybody know what his revenues are? Omar's? I think he said he's going to do 4 million or 3.8 to 4 million. So pure startup, 18 months later, first full year, he'll do 4 million because he's just going through the exact curated process. So we've done it for him. I did it for me. I started our business. We did 2.5 million in the first 6 months. Then I bypassed this, went straight to 14 million during COVID, and then went from 14 million. I went straight to the top end here. We did 40 million last year, and this year we'll do 80 million. Why? Because I already knew, see, this is the thing. When you're building from the ground up, you're like, okay, man, so I'm carrying this big boulder, it's heavy, and I'm not quite sure where I'm gonna go with it. And then you start getting some people around, hey, can you help me carry the boulder? And you're all kind of climbing this hill. And everyone's holding, no one knows where the top of the hill is. Nobody knows where they're gonna take a break. Nobody knows anything, what the dangers are along the way. And you just kind of methodically, one step at a time, plot how you're gonna get to the top of the hill. And then sometimes you're like, why am I the only one holding the boulder? And so you're like, how do I go out and find good people? And then all of a sudden it starts the reality, because businesses are like little volcanoes. They're built from the inside out, and they keep getting bigger and bigger, and then one side collapses, and then you rebuild it, right? And you just keep doing it. Now imagine a world, because if I was gonna go build a 20-story building, I wouldn't start with story one and kind of just figure it out until I get to the 20th floor. I'd go to an architect and say, I wanna build this 20-foot building. What's it look like when it's completed? I figure that out, I have it engineered, I have to go to the city and get permission, right? There's things I have to do, but in business, you don't have to get permission from anybody, and you don't have to get it architected. You can just wing it all day long until it collapses. But the person it collapses on, unfortunately, is usually you and your family, because of the weight of that. It takes a massive toll, personally, professionally, financially. I've had 2 wives, and that's because the first wife, when we got married, I didn't even know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But when I became one, she's like, I don't really want to be married to an entrepreneur. The thing is, you realize, like, if you're not on the same page, this is why it was really important before we got married to go through Elena's relationship program and really get dialed in what we were going to do together, how we were going to do it together. It's scary when you're an entrepreneur and you're building fast and you're pushing hard and you're trying to get things done, and you can go home every day, I'm doing it for the family, I'm doing it for the family. But if the family feels like they have zero involvement, you will break personally. And most of these break points, I hate to admit it, were built off of most of my failures. Trying to figure out how to do it right the next iteration. And then going out and saying, hey, if I had those failures, how many other people had those failures? And if we could solve it for me and we could solve it for them, how many of us don't have to have those failures across these 3 categories, personally, professionally, financially? And if we could do that for us, how much room could we create for our employees that could come along and have a better opportunity to succeed by people that are focused on growing and teaching others to do the same thing? So I've surveyed tens of thousands of business owners from 2009 to 2019 on all these implications and what they did and why they made that choice and what they would do differently, and when they did it differently, what was the impact, and that created the basis for our operating engine. And we call this the 10X operating engine. I mean, this is really how you go from wherever you're at 10X higher.